Good morning, happy Saturday. It is March the 18th, I believe, and we're having a weird winter because we had nothing all winter, like December, January, February. We had it was like warm, and now I'm standing in not quite a foot of snow, but like 10 inches. And I could normally snowshoe, but this is like wet, heavy crap, so not so much. So late March and winter's catching up. We're going to do some tracking today, and I'll probably do some passive infrasound recording again. It's a windy day, so I'll pick up that stuff residually anyway. And I'm searching my brain to see if there's any kind of thoughts in my head too. So we're going to do that, and let's get a move on. We'll see what we find. Okay, so I'm finding the tough going somewhat. And off that way, there's some kind of an odd sound over there. I want to say it's like an animal sound, but I don't recognize it. We're in the same area we were in last week. Again, it's like 10 inches of snow, so going's a little slower today. But as weird a sound as it is, I think what it is, the trees are swaying in the wind, and it's the creaking noise. I think that's what it is, actually. I didn't attribute it to anything out of the ordinary, but I'm like, what is that background noise? I think it's just creaking trees. So just there are things in nature that do make very bizarre noises. The couple of examples, I almost went in for a swim, are like the pileated woodpecker. I know I didn't say that right. Can make a weird ass sound. Seems like a lot of the references I'm about to make are birds. I think it's the emu, or a bird like that, of the not quite ostrich, but of that, the smaller cousin too. One of them makes a noise, and God knows how they do. But it literally sounds like the scraping metal sound, like when your brakes are going bad on your car. We were years ago at an animal farm, like a game farm place in the northwest corner of the state, and they had them there, and I have a distinct memory. I was just wondering out loud, how the heck is a bird making that noise? That is the weirdest damn thing. And it is. Anyway, 5 minutes into a video and I'm already rambling. And just to make the point, snow's kind of deep today. So there's probably going to be a lot more stop and start and slower going, because it's just that deep. But that's okay. Unfortunately, snowshoeing would probably be less productive today just because of the heaviness of the snow. I actually thought I was going to get deeper in today because the snow, for some reason I thought it would have all melted, but during the week we had a storm where, depending on where you were in the state, I was on the lower half, so we got wet and heavy cold rain. Up here, it would seem that the amount of snow has doubled. So there's that. I'm trying to think of any, actual Bigfoot stuff, but it seems this is kind of an old chestnut to dust off, but we'll go with this at the moment. I hear that sound again. That's the weirdest sound. It's explainable and explained, but it's weird. So take it for what it is. It seems, maybe it's just the time of year, but it seems like every other town in America recently has a conference all their own, which kind of raises the question for me anyway. Yeah, at what point does what is, obviously a niche market, at what point does it get thoroughly oversaturated? Because in the last 3 days, plugging into Facebook, I see easily 5 or 6 new ones I haven't seen before that are East Jabru by Bigfoot Festival. Okay, that's nice, but the illustrious Jeff Meldrum can only make so many of these things that you have, people making their money on the speaker circuit. He's usually one of those. It's definitely those trees over there. I'll stop obsessing on that now. Him and like Barrickman are the two top draws. There are other people too. I see Lyle Blackburn come up a lot. I've talked to him once or twice. He's a nice guy. I've actually met Cliff Barrickman too, and he's as nice as his reputation. I'm not bad-mouthing these people for the sake of clarity. I've met Cliff Barrickman at Finding Bigfoot town hall, and his reputation is that he's a wickedly nice guy, and I will say for the record he is. When I met him, he was approachable. He was approachable. He didn't talk down to you. He didn't have like the sense of like a swelled-head celebrity. Nothing like that. He was a everyday Joe, and that is to his credit. Different day. Last week you had all the fresh snow. I got out here right after a fresh snow, so it was a lot different looking than today. My tracks from last week are probably well buried under the new stuff though. But weirdly again, I've made my way in several hundred yards from our intro, and I'm not seeing a lot of tracks. I see my own. I mean, somebody's got to be out here picking up the slack for Bambi and Bullwinkle and the gang, but what the hell, guys, you're slacking. Or maybe you're just not home. So today I actually blew off a bow hunting education course, mainly because it would have been up at this end of the state, and again, I don't really feel like shooting a bow and arrow in this, to make the point. It is definitely one of the trees in there. I apologize, I did say I'd stop obsessing on that. There was a class to be had. The spring turkey season in Connecticut is only a month long. And true to a state that is less than hunter friendly, in my opinion, delving to the borderline of politics, for which I will apologize in advance. You also have to spit out an extra $30 for a turkey tag, which, or well, if you want to hunt birds at all. I mean, you have the way they do it, and I guess a lot of states do one for migratory birds, which is like ducks, and if you're a duck hunter, that kind of thing. But they also, if you are going to hunt grouse and things like that in Connecticut, that's an extra, like grouse, pheasant, and turkey. They have an extra add-on for that, which is kind of annoying in principle. So, it's going to be a little chilly for shooting a bow today, number one, and number two, I just don't know if I want to spend the money for something where, if I'm being perfectly blunt, in the last couple of weeks up here, I've seen no sign of turkey, and they say we have ruffled grouse in Connecticut. I have never seen one. And if you follow my channel, it's not like I'm not like I'm not out in the woods. I'm out in the woods every goddamn week, and I have never seen a ruffled grouse out here. I'm sorry, I haven't. You say they're here, well, they're not where I go. So, not sure what to tell you about that. Whereas, not that there's a correlation, I haven't run into a bear in this particular stretch of woods, but this particular stretch of Connecticut is increasingly being known in the warmer months anyway for having a bear population that is steadily on the rise. Last year, I don't know if I put it in a video, but I actually went on my dash cam driving, not in this exact stretch of woods, but not far from here. A bear started to run in front of the car, decided against it, and went back into the woods, and I had that on my dash cam. Fairly big guy, too. He's probably about 180 pounds, maybe 200. So a decent sized for a black bear, that's a decent size. I'm literally rambling right now. Anyway, well, I'm telling you about my day. So I blew off the bow hunting class. There's another one closer to home at the end of April I might take. But again, I'm starting to think that the spring turkey season is not that much of a priority. When you get to May, I'm going to renew my license up north, and I can go grouse hunting up there. I just have to renew my license. I'm actually already licensed up there because, true to a more hunter-friendly state, Vermont makes it a whole lot easier to get licensed up there as an out-of-state resident, or a non-resident they call it. So I'm licensed up there for. I have to decide whether I want to, because up there again, turkeys are an extra tag, so I'd have to spit out a little extra money for turkey tags and all, but you run into grouse and whatnot, you're licensed for them. You just got to be mindful of when the seasons are. I forget if there's a spring season for grouse up there, but there is one for turkey and such, so maybe I'll spend the money on that. If not, I just bring my fishing pole, because mine's a combination license for all water fishing too. Non-Bigfoot related, but you know, Bigfoot's not the only thing in the woods that brings you out there. If you're an outdoorsy person who likes to do outdoorsy things. And to that end, I don't just do that. I bring the drone out there for scenery shots. I guess that makes me a bit of a videographer and a photographer of a sort. And we talked about the federal thing last week. It's yet another reason why I'm not going to monetize my channel anytime soon, because the minute I do, I owe them money for doing basic hobby shit that I'm not going to spend money on to the government. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm in a national forest, just to make the point again, my tax dollars are paying for that forest, are paying for that park, so I should not have to freaking pay extra money to take pictures of what my tax dollars are already paying for. And if you are in the federal government and you're hearing me say this and you disagree, frankly, suck it. For that record, what we're talking about specifically are the Green Mountains National Forest, and I did some Googling on any kind of a fee structure up there, and I was unable to find any relevant fee that's easily findable in a web search for them to want that kind of a thing. So either they haven't gotten around to the Green Mountains yet, it doesn't apply, or if they did come after me, I could fight that in court and say, where's the documentation? And have some decent talking points in court, because I would fight that if it wasn't like crazy expensive. I mean, there's a point where the fine itself is less than but again, for them to make it applicable as worded as I understand it now, they'd have to prove that I have a monetized channel, and there's no version of anything on YouTube where I do. So they're out of luck. So no, I'm not operating a business. My hobby is not a business in any way, shape, or form. And on a semi-related note, I would deeply appreciate it, moving to Facebook, if the spamming shitheads would stop spamming the Bennington Triangle group with your job ads, because that's not what the group is for, and it says right at the top. It's not a spam group. There's no spam in this group. All that does is get your comment freaking deleted and you banned on site. And I have alerts set up to let me know when that happens, so you're not going to get away with it. Just to make the point. Anyway, it would be nice to move beyond conferences, because we were talking about that originally. So, wrapping up Not doing bow hunting course today. May do it in April, in like late April, early May, because I'd be gearing more towards the fall season for that. Also trying to decide the way I kind of cornered myself down here by the shore. I guess I'm going around this tree over here. What else? So some conferences, there's like 6 that came up that are like from little Easter Brew-esque towns I've never heard of before, so I'm left to wonder if the conference marketplace is a bit oversaturated now. I personally think it is. And the snow down here is surprisingly deep, and there's this dead tree thing I'm suddenly all bunched up in. Anyway, I don't know if that shot kind of made the point, but it's snow suddenly went to like knee deep. But again, you know, Meldrum and Barrickman can only make it to so many of these things. So how many can you realistically have? And who are you using as a draw? You know, there's like only so many big names. This is deep shit. Right now I kind of need to get out of this deep stuff because I can barely move through it. Bloody hell, man. Ugh. This is comical, but it's not, because it's actually like moving through this stuff is problematic, good Lord. Because it's cold, but it's also wet. And, whew, the unexpected workout. Thank God I didn't bring the snowshoes, I'd be hosed. It's one thing if you have your own podcast and your own take on the subject. The one challenge you have there, and largely the reason why I thoroughly gummed myself up in this shit. The reason I don't have a podcast beyond the one episode I did is, number one, I will openly admit I don't have the patience to find a guest every week. And two, it's kind of beholden on the host of the thing to have a new take on it. Again, it's kind of a niche subject, so how many different possibilities are there? That's, whew. Getting back to the monetization things for a minute, if I ever was approached by a would-be sponsor or somebody, I'd have to take that into consideration too, because then a whole lot of monetization, if you're making a decent living from it, all the power to you, but I'm going to rest for a minute. You need to also remember it comes with some ramifications. One of which is if you use a drone in like even one video and the feds find it and it's modified and it's monetized. I know people that were fined by the FAA a couple $1,000s for one count of that. They consider it operating a business on federal land without a permit. And the permit probably ain't that cheap either. So I've been told that like the FAA likes to educate people first, but in this case they just straight up fine the people. So at this point in my, I'm not going to call it a career because it's not a job, it's a hobby, but I've made more than 100 videos. So if I made a decision to turn on the monetization switch, now I have to go back through and check each and every one. I don't know exactly how that works, but if I don't, it seems like the feds will. They can make the argument that, I'm finable now. So if you leave that turned off, it's one less complicated. Being a creator should not be like a revenue stream for the government, but they obviously feel differently. If you went back in time, say 8 years ago in the beginning of Bitcoin and that kind of thing, some people probably saw it as, here's a way to make money and I don't have to pay taxes on it. Do you honestly fucking think for 1 second, pardon my French, the government is going to let that stand? That is not how life works. The government is not going to have you creating wealth without getting their cut. And a lot of people could probably go into a whole, philosophical rant on that, but that's unfortunately the way that works. And if you're rich enough and you don't pay your taxes, eventually they're going to come get you. And that will not be to your benefit. I'm honestly trying to think of anything else going on. So the Tall Ones Mark Zasky thing from last week seems to have died down, so I can't even go into that. It just seems like lately the stuff in the community has basically been either conferences or podcasts. And, again, the only argument I have there really is oversaturation of both. But I'm having enough fun just trying to get through this shit. Seeing as it's forest floor and it's not even terrain, you go through one section, it's like 5 inches, and then you go through another and you're up to your thighs. You go down to the freaking shore over there, you're up to your damn thighs. It was hard getting through that. Up here it's a little bit more reasonable. I covered my plans for the early summer too, so there's that. I'm pausing because I'm trying to think of something to cover, and I'm also looking for tracks that I'm not finding any. So at this point, because I'm kind of hucky, I'm gonna take a segment break and cover a little bit of ground. We'll be back in a bit. Okay, we're back. So since I have covered a little bit of ground, it's interesting listening to the stuff coming out of this area in here, because the trees are kind of doing this in the wind. And the amount of naturally occurring background noise that other people might construe for other things, shall we say, is not lost on me. Pardon, I've got a little itch in my throat. The comment I'm going to make, again, this is unfortunately not Bigfoot related, or maybe it is, while you're out here looking for sign, is I hit a couple of dips in here. So forest navigation in deep snow is kind of a safety consideration, because I stepped in one and it went from being about knee deep to being like crotch level deep. So I mean, if you're trying to move through that, you're now getting to a point where it's like so deep that you kind of have to commit to it like in more of a crawl than like actually walking through it, because it's that deep. And this stuff is not white. It's like late March, so it's not light, heavy snow. You get a little snow melt and refreeze action every day. So what I'm walking through is actually pretty wet and heavy. And if I had to freaking like shovel my way back to the car right now, I would be looking at a heart attack probably. If this is on your driveway, this is definitely what they call heart attack snow. I'm gonna make an executive decision for the video that, I mean, if there's not squatchy material to cover, I'm gonna kind of go down a more personal note. For those of you that know me on Facebook, I posted some things the other day. They were taken by some as kind of like a cry for help, you know, mental health wise, and I'm not going to say they completely weren't. I hope you don't read too much into it. I wasn't like pondering my demise or anything, but it's an interesting thing because I think I've mentioned this before. I was in therapy for like 2 years for some stuff. And I don't normally get this candid, but I think it's a thing that needs to be said. Kind of like a being real kind of thing. So my therapist and I had built up a really good rapport over the course of 2 years, and you get to a point where you can actually cover some ground with your demons with that person. And what I dealt with this week unexpectedly, and probably at the worst time, because I was having a I was having a low point with mental stuff, and it was this week I found out she's closing up her practice. So I'm now I've had a couple of days to reflect on it, so I'm a little bit better with it. But you have this feeling of like abandonment anxiety when it happens. And I'm left with kind of like a late New Year's resolution. Do I start all over again with somebody new? Or do I kind of just like man up and try to go it alone for a bit and see how it goes? I think that's as far down that rabbit hole as I want to go right now. But I guess the message I'm trying to deliver is... Okay, that was a tree. That literally sounded like an animal. That's a weird noise. I've said this before, and I do mean it. Don't ignore your mental health. Don't try to like you're fine, because when it does build up to a point, it will mess you up. And the reason I posted what I did is because I needed to have someone reach out and offer to be willing to talk or something, because I was having some low points that were concerning. I could go into a whole spectrum of things like suicidal ideation versus like full-on suicidal thoughts, like you're planning to kill yourself. And I think that a lot of people, without realizing it, have ideation where you're just thinking about, it's like a thought in your head, but it's not. There's a lot of people in the mental health industry that, notice I call it an industry that, that's interesting right there. Actually, I don't think that's naturally occurring, actually. That's interesting. So look at that while I get my point out. There's a point where people do have what I call passive casual ideation, and I do suffer from bouts of that. And I think a lot of people do as well. I don't think it's like people that jiggle doorknobs. I don't really think it's that uncommon. Don't ignore it, because when you start to feel like that sense of it gets more intense is when you really should talk to someone. I didn't get to the point where I was thinking I need to call the crisis line or something, but you're in that neighborhood when you have these thoughts in your head. Don't ignore that. I'm going to stop that point at that point because I don't want to dwell on it all day. I actually want to look at this now. As I'm talking, I find this thing. It's like... I mean, this part is naturally reoccurring. Get my finger in there. And that part looks like it's propping it up. So, I mean, this is an interesting little, this is a legitimate stick structure. I'm not saying Bigfoot did it. I'm not gonna theorize on a cause of it, but I mean, this is literally propping that up, and that didn't happen by way of nature. That was propped up by something. Come on. Another look at that. Yeah, that's not, this is not planted in the ground. That was like propped like that. So that could always be humans. Probably was humans, but it is a momentarily interesting find. I didn't mean to segue away from a heavy subject like that, but I don't want to dwell on it either. I don't want to have people. So if you are watching this and you heard what I said, do me a massive favor right now. And I cite my example, and I'm going to cite one now. In my YouTube feed a couple years back, I don't know why this came into my feed. I don't typically see stuff like this in my feed, but there was a video put out by an angsty 20-something-year-old girl who so brilliantly titled her video, "Today was the worst day ever, I just want to kill myself." That was the name of the video. She went in front of her camera, for the sake of you wrapping your mind around this, and made this video. She rendered this video, and then she published it to fucking YouTube. And what do you think happened when she did that? She basically had one of her followers get concerned and called the police. Now, being 20 and stupid and having expounded and gotten that out of her system, she went off and went over to a friend's house, because I saw the video that was a reaction to what happened. And 3 hours later, the police are looking for her. Her mother calls her up and says, "The police are here looking for you. I want to talk about your video." Because she posted something saying she wanted to kill herself. And that basically triggers in people the need to, like, you need to go have a wellness check on this person because they might be doing something rash. And we're going to do a double story time on this, actually. So she comes home, first mistake, and the police cuff her and they take her to the emergency room for a psych eval. Kind of like, you're coming with us, and no, you don't have a choice. So she gets there, she talks to the doctor. She got lucky because the doctor actually didn't hold her over for 72 hours. But he was telling her as kind of a cautionary tale, okay, I get what this was, but more often than not, we keep the person for 72 hours because of liability. In some cases around the country, typically down south, in a situation like this, if they like your insurance and you have good insurance, they'll keep you longer for reasons that border on medical human trafficking. And you're not going anywhere, you may not need the help, but we like your insurance and we're going to bilk that a bit. The other story time I have relates to myself directly. And that is this. In 2004, going back a ways, I had a rough patch of work where I was stressed. And it culminated one Saturday with me oversleeping and missing dinner plans. And the person I had dinner plans with overreacted and called in, that's right, a wellness check. Now, everybody came to the door. You had two cops and the person in question, and they all heard me snoring. For those that are not aware, there are three ways for a police person to walk into your house. One is by consent, you let them in. I was asleep, consent was not given. Or they have a warrant. I did not have a warrant, so that's out of the way. Or by way of what they call exigent circumstances, which means a perceived emergency. So say you're asleep and God forbid your house is on fire. Yes, they can kick in the door and wake you up and get you out of there to keep you from being burned alive in a fire. However, snoring in and of itself was not an emergency, and these people came in. They came into my house basically illegally. And what followed was I got shaken out of a sound sleep to the point of having neck pain, so I would argue that the overzealous officer assaulted me. I was subjected to an illegal search of my house because, again, they need probable cause or consent. They had neither, in my opinion. They found nothing. I mean, understand, the officer went looking in a one-bedroom apartment for like 20 minutes, desperately looking for something to justify what he had already done. And he found my multivitamin, nothing more. But here's the fun. After not finding anything, he was visibly agitated, and he started talking about taking me, whether I like it or not, to the emergency room for a psych eval. And if you go in to the emergency room in a situation like this with the cops there, you have a much greater chance of being held over for 72 hours when, again, in my case, it was ridiculous because all I did was oversleep. But this happened. So where I'm going with this, in this rambling rant to nowhere, I did, in fact, express a need for somebody to reach out and say, if you want to talk, please do. And I appreciate the people that offered. But if I don't specifically say that I need the help, please don't do what that girl's follower did and set me up for a situation like that, because if I felt honestly like I needed the help, I would reach out and I would get it. I would ask that you respect my boundaries on that. I would be understanding of the fact that your intentions were in the right place, but understand I don't want you to react that way. Because the things that I'm saying I struggled with this week, I've struggled with for a long time. It really isn't anything that new, so don't ignore these things, but again, don't. It's all, you got to gauge the situation. Right now I'm saying I'm okay, and I am. But the cautionary tale on being a good Samaritan is this girl could have spent her weekend plus in a setting where you're in a psych ward, and once you're in the psych ward, the thing is that they don't tell you is they'll tell you you have rights, and basically in the perception of the staff that are there, you're a mental 5-year-old, and you're not going to have the rights they tell you that you do. So in some places like in British Columbia specifically, they can give you electric shock therapy without your consent. That's the kind of situation you could find yourself in. So don't, put your finger in the water, put your toe in the water before you jump in, I guess. On that happy note, we're going to wrap this up because this is going into territory that I'm expounding too far into, and I got to wander my way back to the tree line and find my way out of here without going through thigh-deep snow again. So like, subscribe. I apologize for the rambling nature of this one. And we'll go forward. We'll catch you next time. Bye.